Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thrilled to be here. So thank you, Bhavna, for the invitation. I know there's a lot of people who find Flow Builder a little intimidating or scary. What I really wanted to do is just kind of get you past those first date jitters. When you meet somebody new, you want to find out all those things about them, the basic statistics and, just kind of get comfortable. And so that's really what we're going to try and do today. And not only are we going to talk through a lot of these in concept, then we're also going to jump in. I'm going to jump into a dev org and I'm going to build some things live to help you understand the concepts that we're talking about. Well, hang on. Apparently I need to figure out how to work my PowerPoint because this isn't doing so well.
And here's witness success that everybody should come to.
But yes, there is Witness Success. We all want you to join Witness Success as well as it's co-located with Midwest Dreamin'.
Right. So write down those dates and make plans to come to Minneapolis.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's try this whole PowerPoint thing one more time. All right, so a little bit about me. As Bhavna said, I'm all over the place. So I really enjoy giving back to the community and it's important to me to do so. So as she mentioned, I am on the board and the planning committee for Witness Success and Midwest Dreamin'. I co-host the Automation Hour webinar series. I'm also a community group leader, MVP. I did receive a golden hoodie at Dreamforce in 2022. And I have presented all over the place and just absolutely love being able to talk about flow and nerd out with all my people. So I want this to be really informal. I know sometimes in big groups, it can seem like I'm just going to sit here and blather on. Really stop me if you have questions, come off mute, throw them in the chat, whatever is most comfortable for you. But if you don't get anything out of the session, then I haven't done my job. So I want to make sure that when you leave today, you're feeling more comfortable with flows or at least excited to learn more. So, all right, some basic statistics about flow. So flow has actually been around for a long time. It was the first thing that I ever learned when I became a Salesforce admin. So in 2013, I became an accidental admin. They said, hey, we have this project we want you to work on. I said, okay, cool. Let me go do some research. And I went, all right, sounds like this needs flow. Guess I'll go learn flow and figure out how to do it. In some ways, I think that worked to my advantage because I was new enough that I didn't know it was supposed to be hard. So I just learned it and that was that. The cool thing though, is that because of that, Flow works with both Classic and Lightning. So even if you haven't made that switch, you can still leverage all of the great things about Flow. You can also have some specific components that require Lightning runtime. That still works in Classic too. It's literally a box that you check in your automation settings. So there's no reason why you can't use Flow even if you're still on Classic. Now, there's a lot of different kinds of flow. With triggers, we get triggers. With Process Builder and Workflow Rules, you just got those. There wasn't really a whole lot to it. But flows have a lot of different types. They can have screen flows where you actually plan on interacting with the user. You can also have your auto-launched flows that are called from like Apex classes or how we used to launch them from processes. You can have now record-triggered flows, which is basically the replacement for processes, as well as schedule-triggered flows. So it's not dependent on a record changing, it's dependent on a day and time coming due. And then there's more than that as well that we can get into. The cool thing about Flow is that not only can you do the things that you could with workflow rules, like creating a record or a task or updating a record, you can do so much more. Even with Process Builder, you could call flows, post a chatter, and you can do all of those things with Flow. But you can also create unrelated records. You can update unrelated records. You can delete records. So for me, I really kind of think of Flow as Process Builder's cooler, bigger, older brother. And he's the one that I want to kind of cozy up to and get to know. So that's a lot of where kind of Flow fits in the hierarchy. They are moving away from the others. And so all of the features and functionality that you had in like workflow rules or processes, you now have in Flow. So you can also use it to send emails or custom notifications. And it automatically has access to all of the quick actions that you have in your org already. So if there's something that you've built, you can reuse it. which I think is also pretty cool because it helps us get things done faster. And then finally, you can actually call flows from flows. So not every type exactly has this capability, but it's really nice to have that kind of a framework for you to be able to kind of break up your logic and make things reusable, as well as keep things a little bit cleaner on the canvas. So if you didn't know this, by the way, processes are actually flows under the hood. So the email that you would always get if a process were to fail for some reason is actually the flow error email. And I figured out one day why they were so hard to interpret. It's because when I built something in Process Builder, they had to rename all of the components behind the scenes. And renaming those components is what actually shows up in your error email. If you click into where is this field used on any custom field and setup, and it's used in a process, it'll actually open the version in Flow Builder, and you'll be able to see that.
That's super cool.
Okay. So Flow's got a lot of moving pieces. So let's talk about some of those. And over on the left side of the canvas, we have the toolbox. And there's two main things that you have. You have elements and then you have resources. And so elements for me are things that you're going to drag onto the canvas to do things in your flow. The flow is essentially a sandbox within your org. You can play around with things in Flow, you can mess with stuff, you can do all sorts of different things. And it doesn't actually have any impact on your org until you start messing with this pink stuff down here. So we'll get to that here in a quick second. I'm going to explain what all of these are. But depending on the type of flow you're using will determine the elements that you have available. So for example, if you're using a record triggered flow, screens aren't going to show up here. You can't have a screen if you don't have a screen flow. So, but screens are where you can add information that you want your users to interact with or to give them directions. You can use display text and tell them things. You can put images or GIFs even, and you can also put in input fields, places where you maybe want to ask them a question and have them provide you an answer or look up a record, for example. So think of ScreenFlows as kind of like a wizard. If you want to step somebody through a process, that's when you would want to use a ScreenFlow. So actions, this is how you access all of the standard and quick actions in your org. So things like log a call or send an email. Those are all under actions. And then finally, subflows. If you have one of the types that can access other flows, calling a second flow from within the first flow is called a subflow because it kind of steps down and it runs within the confines of that. So there are some limitations. You can only call a screen flow from another screen flow. So again, you can't even have like a record triggered flow and then call a screen flow from that because that's not how that works. So you can call an auto launched flow from an auto launched flow. You can call an auto launched or a screen flow from a screen flow. And again, neither one of those can call a record triggered flow because a record triggered flow has to be triggered by a change to a record. So if you have a screen flow that's making changes to your record, it might trigger a record triggered flow, but you won't put that on your canvas as a subflow. Okay, so now we're going to go into the logic. So the three yellow elements here. So again, like I said, this is kind of a sandbox, so you can manipulate data within your flow as much as you want without hurting your org at all. So I can use an assignment and I could change the name of a record to anything I want. So if I have an account that's called Acme Inc. and I really feel like it, I could go into a flow, have a decision, and I could have that assignment, and I could say, assign the name field of this record to Bhavna Loves Salesforce. Now, in my org, that's really going to mess some stuff up because I need to know what Acme actually is, but I can do that. And as long as I'm just doing that with an assignment on my canvas, it's not hurting anything in the org. It still says Acme for everybody else. There's nothing that's actually changed just because I made that assignment. So, but that is how you can set the values of different fields or different records or variables. And we'll get to those in a minute. So decisions, this is how you can branch your logic. So if I have a certain path that I want to take. So for example, I could say, did I find a record called Bhavna Loves Salesforce? And I could have a decision that looks for a record with that name. And I can have two paths. Yes, I found the record. Nope, didn't find the record. And then I can have my flow take different actions after that based on the outcome of that decision. Yes, I found it. Great. Maybe I want to go update the address. Nope, didn't find it. Okay, now I need to go create a record. So that's what you're going to use a decision for. Essentially, you're asking questions so that based on the answer to that question, you can decide what actions to take next. And then finally, loops we'll talk about in more detail in a little bit, but loops are how you deal with multiple records or multiple variables that you get at the same time. So if you've ever taken a stack of paper and you've written on the top sheet, your pen does not magically make the ink flow down to all of the papers underneath it. You actually have to deal with all of those papers one at a time. So the same thing is basically what a loop is doing. It's taking a stack of records or a collection of some sort, and it's helping you work through them one at a time. So here is what I really want to make sure that you catch, pay attention to. If you remember nothing else from this, you should never, ever put pink inside of a loop. And then, of course, there's always exceptions, but really for today, that's the rule. No pink in a loop.
I wish we could do that for developers, no pink in the loop somehow in the code.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we have our data elements, and this is the pink stuff. Now, pink is where it gets real. You're going to create records. You're going to update records. You can get records or retrieve them. So you can do a search basically of your database, or with Flow, you can delete records. Now, as soon as that pink is on your canvas and your flow runs and that pink element is accessed, your database has been changed. So before it was all fun and games when I took the Acme record and I used an assignment variable to change the name of it to Bhavna Loves Salesforce. I was joking around. It was all fun. We were all laughing and having a good time until all of a sudden I put that stupid little pink update records on the canvas and it became a real. And the next day I got fired. So this is how you can remember to make sure that you actually make the updates into your database is by using these pink elements here. So when you're ready, you've made all the changes to a record that you want to make. That's when we go and we do a create or an update. So usually our goal is to limit or minimize the amount of pink on the canvas because we want to make sure that we are not going to hit governor limits. And governor limits in a nutshell are Salesforce is one big server and we all get a piece of it. So I like to think of it as pie. So Salesforce is one big pie and all of our orgs are one little piece of that pie. And so using the resources that we have allocated to us is each one of us eating our slice of pie. If I get greedy and I eat all my pie and go try and steal Bhavna's, she will stab me with a fork. I don't know if you knew that about her, but maybe you shouldn't mess with Bhavna's pie.
Yeah.
Or other chocolate dessert. But essentially, I'm supposed to stay within my own piece of pie. So if for some odd reason I don't, Salesforce basically says Bhavna being violent, not really a good thing. We don't want to encourage this. So instead of Bhavna stabbing me with her fork because I stole her resources, they are going to shut down whatever process that I have running. And they're going to stop me at that point. And not only are they going to say, no, you can't eat Bhavna's pie, but they're going to go back and actually take away my piece of pie and be like, no, you don't get to eat that. So that's where it becomes very important for us to be mindful of those governor limits. So that's something that in code, the developers are always very well aware of that. We still have to be aware of those things with our automations, even though we're doing it point and click. So any questions so far? So, and Tri Riley, I see your question about not putting pink in a loop. We'll elaborate on that more here in just a few minutes, promise. Okay. So those are the elements. Those are the things that you're going to put on a canvas that tell your flow what I want it to do. I want to assign the name field to a record. I want you to tell me if you could find a record or not. I want to create a record or update a record. So in order to work with these elements, sometimes you need resources. And so resources I like to think of as little boxes on my desk that everything goes into. Flow has to be very organized. I can't have sticky notes on my desk. I can't have paper strewn about. everything needs to be in a box and it needs to be labeled. So you know exactly what's happening. So the first box that we have is a variable. And so honestly, I consider a variable more like a bag. So a bag can hold something that's square. It can hold something that is round. It can hold something that's weird and lumpy. So a variable you can create the shape of and determine what you want it to hold. And so it may change over time. But the important part is that the structure of it is going to stay the same. So you might have a variable that's text, or a variable that's a number, or percentage, or a date. And so you need to make sure that whatever you're putting into that box, that variable, is the same type. So I can't have a date variable and put blue in it because blue is not a date. But I could have a variable called color. And when I run the flow, let's say it asks me what my favorite color is, and I say purple. And then later Bhavna comes and runs the flow. Bhavna, what's your favorite color?
Oh, so many. Let's just say blue.
So then the variable is going to change when Bhavna runs the flow, and that color variable is going to be set to blue because that's Bhavna's favorite color. So it's a container. It holds information. It's always going to hold text, and it's going to hold something related to color because that's what I named it and what I'm going to use it for. But it can't be the number 2, or it can't be 35%, or it can't be today's date. Now, technically numbers can be text, but I think you kind of get the drift. So a constant is a container that's locked. You put something in it and then you lock it so nothing can go in there and take it out. They can't change it. You can't do anything to it. Once you've put it in the box, that's what's in the box to stay. So a lot of times I'll use this for something like a formula or a flow name. So if I want the name of my flow to be available for me to use, I need to put it in a container somewhere. And I know the name of that flow is not going to change. So I'm going to put it into a constant. And that also helps me understand that this piece of information I have here, I don't expect to change. I don't want it to change. So it's not a variable. I could use it with a variable, but for my purposes, I want to make it constant so that I know it can't be changed. So formulas. Formulas are a way to manipulate information to get some other outcome. So if I need to do some simple math, like calculating a tip, I can go in and say, okay, total bill is 20 bucks. I want to calculate a tip. So I'm going to take total bill times 20%. I'm going to take my 20 bucks times 20%, and I'm going to get that answer as my formula. So it'll be $4. So you can use formula with words. If I want to use it for a naming convention, what I might do is take an opportunity name where I want this to be whatever the user input, but I want to make sure that we add the account number to the back of it, or the account name, so that I know exactly which account this is tied to without having to look at the page or have it in the list view. So I can take a formula that takes the opportunity name entered by the user and adds the account name on the back of it, and then sets that to be the new record name. So a text template, this is kind of like a Microsoft Word merge template. So I think of this a lot if I have emails. The body of the email that I want to put together, usually I want to go dear, and then first name, and then I have a line break, and then on a second line, I tell them something. Maybe it's something like, thank you for your recent purchase on insert date here. We hope you enjoy insert name of product here. If you have any questions, please contact us at this number. Sincerely, enter name of sales rep here. Now, I don't want this to just be this gobbledygook string of text. I want it to be nicely formatted, and I have some pieces in there where I need to pull in merge fields that are specific to the situation. So that's where I would use a text template. Okay, so choices. If you build a screen flow that has a pick list, you have to give your users the choices to select from in that pick list. And so you can do this a number of different ways. You can build just regular old choices. So for example, I have, are you happy today? I could have a pick list choice for yes and a pick list choice for no. And so I'd need to build both of those individually. You can have a record choice set. So instead of pulling yes or no, I can say, I want you to be able to pick from all records in the state of South Carolina. And so I can do a record choice set that you can then have that list displayed and they can pick a record. You can do the same thing with a pick list. Instead of having to rebuild a pick list that already exists on an object, so we're going to build an account wizard later. So you may have an account type field. That's standard field in Salesforce. Instead of having to recreate those choices, you can just say, hey, go grab me the pick list field, type on account, and give me all those choices and put this here in my flow. I want to use it. And so it's a great way to be able to reuse things. And every time you change it only in Object Manager and Setup, and your flow then automatically absorbs those changes and it's up to date. Stage, finally, lets you set stages within your flow. So this is really good if you have multi-state and multi-screen flows. And you want to walk your user through something like a wizard. It helps to have those stages so you can sort of see how far along you are. Like maybe you're on, page 1 of 3 or 2 of 3, and it kind of helps give that visual to your user. Okay. So let me stop there and see if there's any questions. So it looks like I've got a couple. So, Zita, do they at least send a message when you go beyond the governor limits? Yeah, you'll get a really nasty error message. You'll get the error emails. Your user will get a really nasty error message, the big red scary ones. And basically everything that you tried to do will also be rolled back. So nothing else is actually going to happen as
It's
well.
a Zoom. It started late, so I'm joining late. It's just a Zoom. But yeah, it started about 30 minutes ago, but no biggie.
Okay, so an example for a constant would be like the name of my flow, or maybe the value of pi. If you remember back to algebra, pi is always 3.14. So instead of having to hard code that in somewhere, I can create a constant, call it pi, and put a value of 3.14. And then every time I need to reference that, instead of having to type in 3.14, I can go ahead and throw in my pi constant. So, all right. Gurpreet asks question, record triggered flow or triggers, how to decide what to use. That is going to be something each organization is going to have to decide for themselves. And I have a whole different presentation I can do on that one. So I'm going to try and keep this answer pretty short. It depends on the staff that you have and their skill levels. It depends on what else is going on in your org. Some orgs will decide if they have a trigger on an object, all automation is going to go through that trigger and you have no choice to use anything else. I understand and respect that, but I don't actually agree with it. Record triggered flows are much more accessible. So you are not restricted to only changes being able to be made by a developer team that understands Apex. I think there's a great way for click configuration admins and code writing developers to work together. And you can do that successfully. But again, every organization is going to have to decide that for themselves. You don't have a maximum of either triggers or record triggered flows per object. There are no limits on that. So really the design pattern that you choose is up to you. So, and stage, Lakshmi, I see your question. It's not new. It's been around for several years, but I don't know how terribly well used it is. I know personally, I've never had a use case for it, but it does exist. So I try and at least make sure we talk about it. So, all right. So we've got all of these great resources that we're going to use with our elements on the canvas. But before we dive into some of that, let's talk about something real important. Names. So before you get started on your automation journey, decide on a naming convention for all of your resources. And honestly, probably for your elements too, it makes them easier to kind of identify, especially if you ever go look at things behind the scenes, like in code or XML files, if you've got developers that do those things. So there is a standard in code called camel case. And so it's just how they do it in code for whatever reason. I don't necessarily know, but the first letter you use is lowercase. And then every new word that you have in line, because you can't have spaces, gets capitalized. So if you think about your favorite hashtags on social media, if you capitalize the first letter of every word, it makes it really easy to figure out what that hashtag is supposed to say, instead of every letter being lowercase and you're like, okay, does the word end here? Does the word end over there? Like, I'm not really sure exactly what this hashtag's trying to say. And I completely agree with that. The capitalization is way easier to read. And so for me, especially, what I try and do is include some sort of resource abbreviation for easy reference. So if I have a variable, I'm going to put a prefix on it called VAR. And the underscore or not is up to you. If you like spaces, use underscores. Otherwise, you can just squish them all together. So you've got like account name. You're not allowed to have spaces in your API names, as we all know. Same thing happens for fields. So this is how you can make them more legible. So if it's a formula, I'm going to put FML in front. For choices, not only do I put the C for choice, but if I have multiple pick lists, I also identify which pick list it's part of. So I have a product pick list here, and I have training as one of the choices that go with product. And so this actually allows me to group them together. And I'll see if I can't pull up an org that has this in here for me to show you an example of. But instead of having to bounce all over, because I have one product called training and one product called implementation and one called after hour support, and then I would have one in the A's and one in the I's and one in the T's, I can actually see them all very well organized together, because it's going to say product, after hour support, product implementation, product training. And so they're all grouped together for me. So for collection variables, I actually call out that it's a collection with a CVAR instead, because you have to treat collections very differently than you treat regular record variables or regular variables. So calling that out. And then anytime I use a pick list choice set where I'm looking for a pick list field that's on an object, then I put a PCS for pick list choice set. Also add in the object and the field name that it's referencing. So that way it's very easy for me to go and figure out exactly what field this pick list choice set is built off of. So, all right, I see a few other questions that have popped in. So when do you need to declare a variable? Yep, you're going to declare variables in your flow where you have need of them. Salesforce has done a great job of kind of building those for you in a lot of cases, but variables are generally used within your flow elements on the canvas to hold data, and then you can manipulate those with the elements. Okay, so talking about variables and naming conventions, here's the only time when I kind of don't follow those naming conventions, and those are because Salesforce has some reserved special variables that we want to make sure we can use. So this first one is record ID. And so this is very specifically reserved by Salesforce that says, hey, you're on a record, and that record is going to change today versus tomorrow when this flow runs. And so I need to know what record you're on, so I have context and I know exactly which record in the database to go get the fields for and to do everything else. So if you use this particular variable, Salesforce knows what that means, and it's going to give you the ability to automatically pass in the ID of the record that you're launching your flow from. And they've actually improved this so that it's not just the ID, the text variable of the ID, but it can actually pull the full structure of the record in if you pass in record ID as a record variable. And so again, this is where that camel case makes a big difference. You have to have a lowercase r, a capital I, a lowercase d, and no spaces. If it does not look exactly like this, it's not that variable and it won't work that way.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's what I knew last. I don't know if there's been any changes to that, but that's how I've always understood it. So I always make sure I follow that particular naming convention. So, and then $record is a global variable that it's whatever record we're working with. And again, we don't know when this flow is going to run. We don't know exactly which record it's going to be. Is it going to be the Acme account? Is it going to be our new Bhavna Love Salesforce account? Is it going to be Time Warner Cable? Is it going to be Google? So $ record is a placeholder that says, I know what object we're talking about, so we can talk about which fields you want me to go get, what fields you want me to work with, but I just don't know which one of these records we need for now. So $ record is our placeholder. So as we talk about the different types of flows, most of the time it is important for you to make sure, because of those governor limits, that we're limiting the pink on the canvas. So if you're working with multiple records, so let's say go grab all the accounts in New York, and I want to update every account in New York with a new checkbox that says we have to call them every year for some sort of new privacy regulation. I could go and do that all by hand. That sounds terrible. Or I could go into a flow and say, hey, go find me all the records in New York. And then we'll talk about loops, and I'm going to loop through everyone. And with every record you find, go update that box and put a pink update element on the canvas. If I have 200 records, it's going to make 200 calls to the database. That's going to make Salesforce a little cranky. And 200 is not so bad, but what happens when that number becomes 50,000? Now Salesforce is getting real angry, and you're not going to be able to do that. So we need to make sure that we're bulkifying that. And that's where this last bullet becomes very important. There's the scheduled flow. And scheduled flow has a couple of nuances to it, where if you set the object and the criteria that you want it to run on, it actually runs a single flow interview or instance of that flow for every record that makes the criteria. So if you have 200 records, it'll run 200 flows, and it'll work with every record individually. So that's one of those things where may not make a lot of sense now. Someday when you get into a situation, you'll remember that you heard this in a presentation, and you'll be like, oh, right, this is a little bit different. It handles things different, and I can remember that and build accordingly. Okay, so we talked about loops. We're going to go into more detail about loops and how loops actually work. So if we have multiple records that we go get, let's say we have 3 records we go get from the database. And so I've said, go get me all of the account records that are for St. Louis, Missouri, where I'm from. And we come back with 3. I have now this stack of 3 records. If we were to think about this in terms of actual physical paper, every record in our database is one sheet of paper that has basically all of the information from the account on it. Now, again, like I said earlier, if I take that stack of 3 pieces of paper, put it on my desk, and I start writing on the top piece of paper, the ink does not magically bleed through to all of the pieces below. And so that is where a loop comes in. When you get your 3 records, we need to iterate through those loops, is what it's called. And so essentially what you're going to do is you're going to have your stack of paper, and we're going to put it over here on the side of our desk, and I'm going to pick up the first piece, and I'm going to put it down in front of me. And so now we're here. And so in Salesforce, when we start counting at 0. So the first time through the loop is called iteration 0. We've picked up our piece of paper, we've put it down in front of us, and I have edited that record, and I've done whatever I need to do with it. So now I'm done, right? Updated into the database. Okay. So I get up from my desk with my piece of paper. I walk over to the filing cabinet. I figure out where it goes, and I put it in, and I walk back to my desk. Now that I've sat back down on my desk, we're over here on iteration 1, second time through the loop. I pick up that second piece of paper from my desk, put it from the stack in front of me, make the edits to that record, walk my little butt back over to the filing cabinet and put it away. Walk back to my desk one more time. Now we're down here on this third iteration, iteration 2. And I grab that last piece of paper that was on the stack to my left, put it down in front of me, make the edits, get back up, walk back over to the filing cabinet, and I file it. Now, let's say that the filing cabinet is actually 3 flights of stairs down and across the building. How many people on this call think that is a great way to use my time today? By the way, I forgot my Fitbit at home. I'm getting no credit for exercise.
I was going to say, if you get Fitbit stuff, what you got me for that?
No, you don't get any of those.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Anybody on the call want to do this? Well, nobody's coming off mute to say this sounds like a great idea. So I'm assuming that nobody likes this idea. It would make so much more sense for you to do this. And this is where we talk about no pink in the loop. Because every time you get up from your desk and you walk over to that filing cabinet that's 3 flights of stairs down and halfway across the building, that's pink in your loop. So instead, we go get our 3 records. We got them all from the database at the same time. We didn't have to make 3 trips to the database to find them. So we go get our 3 records. We walk back up to our desk. We put them back down. Now this time I'm going to pick up the first piece of paper. I'm going to put it in front of me on the desk. I'm going to make the edit. And instead of getting up and walking to the filing cabinet, I'm going to pick up this piece of paper from the middle and I'm going to put it over here to the other side of my desk in a new pile. I'm going to stay in my desk and I'm going to turn around a little bit and grab that second piece of paper from my stack and put it in front of me. And I'm going to work on it. Great. I'm done. Stack it on top of that first piece. One more time. Pick up my 3rd record, put it down in front of me, make my edits, put it on that pile over to the left. Now I have an empty pile on my left and I have 3 records in a pile to my right. I'm going to pick up that whole pile of 3 records in my hand and I'm going to take one trip back to my database and file all 3 records at the same time. So this is where you take the pink outside the loop, you make one trip back to the filing cabinet or to the database and you file all of your records at one time. So, Lakshmi, for your question, do we need to declare a record collection variable and then start the loop? Within Flow, yes. Although most of the time your record collection variable, you don't necessarily have to declare because it's usually the result of you doing a get records. So I'll have a get records element that says, go get me all of the accounts in St. Louis, Missouri, and it'll bring me back 3, and that will be your collection. So it's already declared for you. So hopefully that answers that. All right. So
And so on.
that's what we got about no pink in the loop. We want to bulkify is what it's called. Essentially, we want to save our steps. We want to save our energy. We don't want to walk to the filing cabinet with one piece of paper at a time. All right. I have an angry kitty that's going to be removed from my lap so we can get hands on here. We'll see how much trouble I get in for doing that. But we're going to get hands on. I'm going to dig through some stuff and we're actually going to build a couple of these out with the time we have left. So just kind of my disclaimer. Some of these situations I would never actually do in real life, but I am using them specifically to illustrate and teach concepts with Flow. So some of the things you see here might be great ideas. You can take them back and just build a flow to do the same thing. Others, not so much. And that's kind of by design. Okay, so flow scenario number 1. User adoption is problematic. Our users are complaining that it's so hard to create an account and a contact. Like, I just can't do it. There's too many steps. I need too much information. I don't want to do it. Fix this, admin. So we say, okay, what we're going to do is we're actually going to build you a wizard that allows you to capture basic information, and we're going to make this one screen. I can get everything I need with one screen. You fill out just a few fields, and we'll go ahead and make this happen. So, all right, we're going to hop into a dev org over here. And we're going to create a new flow. Okay, so once we open Flow Builder, it's going to say, hey, cool, what kind of flow do we want to make today? And because we have a wizard where we need input from our user, it's going to be the screen flow here. So we'll click create. And so first things first, what I need is I need a screen. So when I click in here to add an element, I'm going to go ahead and click on screen. Now, again, we need to label everything. So we're going to just start with some of all this. So I'm going to make this my input screen. Now, when you put in the label, it's going to automatically give you your API name. And again, I'm going to put a SCN prefix in front of it so that I know when I'm looking that this is a screen if I ever need to find this on the back end. So I'm going to skip descriptions for now, but I am a huge proponent of filling out descriptions because now these are all going to be available on your Canvas. So I'll show you that here in a minute. I'm just going to put test in my description. So, okay, now I have a screen. It's got a name. Now I need to start putting things in my actual screen for my user. So the first thing first, I'm going to grab a text field over here. I'm being helped by one of my feline friends here, so apologies for that. So I'm just going to click and drag over a text box. And so again, I need to give it a name. So I'm going to call this account name. And again, I'm going to actually put this with input in front so that I can remember this is something that I expect input from my users. And Bhavna, yes, the variable names will show up in your debug logs. So this is where it gets very helpful. So I'm going to require this field because I can't create an account without an account name. So if you leave this blank, we're both in a world of trouble here. Okay, so now some basic other information that I want to be able to create this account, no problem. I'm going to need an address. So there is an address component that we can use, but it can get a little tricky. So we're just going to use a bunch of text fields. So I'm going to pull a few more of these over on the page because I can grab these and they're all placeholders, no problem. So, and then I can go through. So the first thing I need is a street address. And again, I'm going to put that input in front of it. Next, I'm going to require a city. And this I do require, actually. I need a city and state for my rules for assignments. So I need that information, so that gets to be required. Next is going to come state. Again, that's required. And then finally, I need a zip or a postal code. All right, and so I can go ahead and do that. And then the last thing I want for my account, one more text box, I want a website. Pretty cool. I'm going to require that one too, because any business these days should have a website. I want to make sure we capture that so that we can verify some information about them. Okay, that's pretty cool. That's really all I need for my account. So now we promised to make this easier. So we are going to use one screen to do both our account and our contact. So now I need a few more fields. So I'm going to grab the 3 basic fields I need to actually create a contact. And I'm going to add these down here to the bottom. And so I'm going to have a first name field. And again, first names are nice. I really like it, but that's not exactly required. So I'm not going to require it with the last name. That's definitely required. Can't create a contact without a last name. Salesforce says that's necessary. So we'll make that. And then finally, I'm going to use the email. And that's not supposed to be a text. So we're going to pull that back over and I'm going to grab the email component. So this is one of those that needs that Lightning runtime. So it's going to look a little bit different than some of your other ones. So I'm going to give it an API name for input email. It already comes with a label. So it has some more choices over here. This is why I wanted to show you this Lightning component, Lightning runtime component. I can disable it, which that wouldn't be really smart because we want someone to put information into it. I can give you placeholder text so that you can actually see the format that it's supposed to be on. So you can see how that looks down here. I don't want to make it read only. I do want to make it required though. So I'm going to, instead of checking a box, this is where I can go to my $ global constant true. This is the same as checking the box on the other ones. And so that gives me enough. The value is what the user is going to put in. So we're going to leave this blank for them to be able to actually give us that input. And we're going to use it later. So that's pretty cool. We're done. We've got our screen. I'm going to save this real quick. I think I actually saw a question earlier about, do I have naming conventions for flows? And yes, I do. So for me, what I usually do is start with the object and then go from there depending on what kind of flow it is. Because this is a screen flow, I do it a little bit differently. So I'm actually going to put in where this screen is going to live. So this is going to go on my home screen. And then I'm going to call this screen flow. So SCN for screen flow. And then what is this? This is an account and contact wizard. So this gives me enough information about it. So, you know, screen flow on home page to guide users through basic account and contact creation. So this tells me what I'm doing with my flow, where it's going to live, so I can go find it and figure out where it's going to be used in my org. Okay, that's cool. We're going to save it. And now I can debug it, which is one of my favorite parts because I can see what it looks like. So it's going to run and it's going to show me what this looks like. I'm going to go ahead and hit run. And this is what I've got. I've got one screen with all of these fields in here and I'm looking at it and I'm like, honestly, I hate this. This is not real user friendly. So we can do a few things actually to make this a whole lot better now that I've had a chance to look at it. So I'm going to close my debug and I'm going to go back to edit my flow. Reopen my screen and go, okay, cool. I want some display text. And so instead of scrolling, I can also search for text. Grab display text. I'm going to put this up at the top. And so this isn't something I expect the user to input. This is something that I want to basically display to my user. So I'm going to call this display text account information. And so I'm going to cheat real quick. And I'm going to put this in here. So I'm going to make it blue. I'm going to call it account information, give it a header, and give them some instructions, as well as let them know that anything required has a red asterisk. So that's pretty cool. And then I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to add another display text between when we're done with the account and when we start with the contact. And so display text, contact info. And then this is a rich text box, so I can do whatever I want in here. I can center it. I can call it contact details. Let's make that bold. Let's turn it a nice green color. That's a little small. Maybe we'll turn that up to like 14. Let's underline it while we're at it. All right, that looks like that might be pretty good. So now I can sort of see where this starts to look a little bit better, and it's got some more directions for my users. Looking better. So we'll go ahead and save that. Okay, so that's great. Now we've got our data entry screen. I can get all that information. So now we're going to go straight from that to creating an account. So I'm going to go get my pink. This is where we're going to turn what they gave me into a real actual record. Okay, so create account. Yep, let me put enough of this in here that I can save this screen. So I'm just going to save an account record. All right. So Lakshmi, what else did you need on the screen element? What did you want to see here?
I just would like to see where did you, input the contact information headings also?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, here. Okay, first name, last name, and email, contact details. Okay, thank you. So we need to drag another display text there, and then we need to format according to our wish.
Yep.
Thanks.
So, and you can see exactly what any of those elements are just by clicking on them on screen. So you can see that this is a text. This is the email component. So these will match up with the names over here on the left.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, so we're going to create our account. So we want to create one account. We're going to use separate resources and literal values because we have been given these by our user. Now, there's no reason you can't do it the other way, but I'm teaching the class, so I get to do it the way I like. This is the way we're doing it. So essentially, because we told it it's an account object, Salesforce knows what fields already exist on that object. And I don't need to click wrong boxes. But I don't need to tell it anything more than I just want the account object, and then I can go in here and I can grab all of the fields that I want. So all of a sudden I have access to every field on account. So first of all, we gave us a name. So we're going to take the name, and then I wanted the address. So we're going to start with that street address. I'm going to assign this to the billing address. So we're going to do billing street, billing city, billing state, and then billing zipper postal code. Then after that, I also asked for the website. Okay, so I have those fields here. Now I need to tell you what that name field on this record should be set to. And so this is where on the value side, we are going to go and grab our screen components. So our screen components are acting as variables for us. It's a box that our flow has that says, okay, I have a field on a record that I want to make equal to what the user put into that name box. So if I come down to my screen components, all of my inputs are here with input in front of them. So I know that that's something I'm expecting to be input, and I can find my account name. So my account object name field is going to be set to my input field for account name. If I go here again and I go to input, I can see that list and I can find my street address. I also really hate scrolling through things, so I tend to type a lot. So I know that I have city in here. So it actually narrows down the list with type ahead to anything that matches any part of that name. So I can put in city and have one specific screen component that matches, and that's the one I want to put in here. Same thing for state. And then again, my zip code. But again, if you prefer to scroll, you can scroll until you find the one you want, and we can grab the website here. So these were all very simple text boxes. These are all text fields. So we can actually match all those up one-to-one. So that's all I need to create an account record. So I can go ahead and click done. That's great. Step one, finished. After we create the account, we're going to create the contact. Can anybody tell me why the order of creation is important here?
Means why contact after account, right?
Yep. So essentially the relationship, Anna, perfect. You need to have the account created so that you can then create the child contact and relate it back to that account. So again, we're going to create one contact record. I was given all the information from the user, so we're going to use those literal values that we have from our screen components. And now I'm going to find our contact object. And I had 3 fields. So again, because I'm building a record, I need to tell it which field on that record first I want to use. So first name, last name. Helps if you spell things correctly. And then finally, I need an email address. Now we can actually get a little fancy with this because we have more information that we got on the first screen. So if I wanted to, I could add all of that information on the address to the contact. So I'm actually going to give the mailing state to the contact based on what account it's tied to. So as we talked about, it's very important for you also to build that relationship. And so I need to relate this to an account. And so because it's a master detail relationship, I have this account ID field. We're going to do some magic on that. It's pretty cool. So again, I'm going to pull my first name. I'm going to pull my last name from my text fields. And then we use that really special component for email. And so if I find my email input in here, now I have this little caret, which tells me that it has more inside of it that I need to dig into to find what I actually need. And so this is where all of those little components pieces come in that were on the side, and we're going to go grab the value. So whatever the user types in gets stored in this email field.value. And that's what I'm going to pull here. So then my mailing state, again, we're going to go get that from our input state so we can use it both places. Now here's the coolest thing. Salesforce knows in my flow I created an account. And it says, hey, if you created that account, I'll bet you probably need to know some things about that account record that we just created for you. So I am going to make them available to you in your flow. It's not record ID. Actually, what it is it creates down here a text variable that says, I'm going to pull the account ID out of the database that we just created and make it available to you here. So if I wanted to then use this account ID to go retrieve that information and use that account record and do things with it, I could. But really all I need is the ID so that I can make the relationship between my contact and my account. So I can just grab and throw that right in there, and it's going to say it's the account ID from the account that we created in my create account element. And just like that, one screen, we've created an account, we've created a contact. Now, for me, I always question whether or not things do what they're supposed to do. So I always want to make sure that my users have that same level of confidence. So I'm going to put together one more, and I'm going to call this my confirmation screen. So SCN, confirmation screen. And so now really all I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that display text back over here. And I am going to do some really cool stuff. So you have access to your emoji keyboard. If you're on a Mac, I think it's the funny swirly key and period. It's the Windows key and period on a PC that gives you your emoji library. So I'm going to go find a check mark. And I'm going to add a check mark. I can actually add a GIF in here. I can do several different things with that. What did you just do to me? Don't do that. We'll stick with my emoji. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to put it on either side. I'm going to blow this up to about 18-point font. I'm going to center it. I'm going to make it bold. I'm going to turn this to green because green is a good color. Green means we did things good and right and correctly. All right, so then I can say your account, and then I can actually input a resource here. So I have an account name. So that's that input account name field. That's what we used. So I'm going to shrink this down so we can get a little bit more in here. 14 will be good. To your account and your contact. So I can then go find my first name. And then add a space. Put in last name. Have been created successfully. We'll put an exclamation point on here, and then we'll call that done. Oh, right, I forgot. Display text success message. All right, so I'm going to save this. And so again, we can debug it. It's not active. I haven't put it anywhere. This is where it's really important for you to know how debug runs. So I'm going to do this, and we're actually going to create an account. So I'm going to run my debug. Here's my new pretty screen with my headers. So yay. I'm going to create my Bhavna Love Salesforce account.
I need to register the domain name.
All right, so I'm making up all sorts of fun stuff for Bhavna today, but just like that, I'm going to click this, and then I get my success screen. So over here on my debug log, I can actually see everything that happened with my flow. So I'm actually going to do a split screen here. I'm going to move this to one side and our flow to the other side. So if we walk through this, we start at the top. And the first thing we do is we get a screen. So it tells us everything about the screen name. There's a display text called account info at the top, and this is what it says. I have a text box named input account name. This is the label that it says. On runtime, this is what the user put in. So we can go through and we can see everything for that screen. So now that box ends, and now we have our create account. And so for our create records, create account, it says create one account record where the billing city field equals my input city field, and the value that the user entered was any town. So we're going to come down here and you can see the result. Yep. Okay, we're ready. Here is actually the ID of the record that it created. So then when I do my create contact, I'll be able to see that it created the account, and here is that account ID that matches right up here. Here's my first name, my last name, my mailing state, and now everything else has been done. And so we are now sitting on this element, and this is the screen that I have here. So that's exactly how the debug log takes you through everything that we built. And now if I go back over here, I'm going to go look at my accounts. And I have a recently viewed account called Bhavna Loves Salesforce. And if I go in here and I look at it, I can see her account name. I can see that billing street and address in here. And if I go over to my related, oh, look, I have a contact. Let's open our contact. It's got a name. It's got related to account. It's got an email address. And I have my mailing address with just that state in there. So there you go.
Like somebody's been following you along. Nice.
Awesome. So that is one thing we've done. So I don't know how many people have more time. Do you want me to run through one more scenario, or do we need to wrap? I'll leave it up to the group.
Yeah, Gurpreet had a question because we were recently working on something like this, and the client wanted links to the newly created records, and I created some invocable Apex to get the base URL, but we couldn't figure out if we could do it in flows.
Oh, you can totally do this in flows. How many people want to see that instead of something else?
I'm good.
All right, I'm going to show you how to build a record link in Flow, because I'm nerdy and my heart loves it. So I have a bookmark that I keep, and it's called Eric Smith Formula. There's a great article I'll put in chat from the admin blog. It's formula functions from the awesome admin community, and Eric's formula down here. Where's Eric? Perfect. So this is it. This will give you a formula that will take you to any record in any org, anywhere, anytime. I don't care how many times you move it or where you're at.
Nice. Yeah. See, because I couldn't get the base URL, so I didn't know you had access to $API. That's cool.
Yep, you totally do. So what we're going to do here is I am going to create a formula, because we need a formula to do this. So instead of doing it there, I'm going to come in here, create a formula. So I'm going to call this FML record link. I'm going to call this actually account link. Formula to take the user to the new account. So this is going to be text. And so I cheat and I just paste what Eric has in here. However, Bhavna, especially for you, because what you do is you pull this partner server URL and then you pull out the left of it where you're looking for something specific. This is why I copy all this stuff in here. But if you go to insert a resource down at the bottom, you've got access to $API and all of the lovely things that are in here that I have no idea what they are or what they're for or what they do, which is why I have Eric's formula bookmarked.
That's very cool.
So, all right. So then I take this front part, and then at the end, I add exactly where I want to go, wherever that is. Perfect. So for me, where I want to go is to the ID of the record that we just created. So if I come down here and I find my account ID from Create, I can do this. And I'm going to save this formula as my account link. Done.
That's great.
So now on my confirmation screen, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say, click here to access the new account. Now, nobody that I know likes all that gobbledygook formula nonsense of URLs. So what I'm going to do is, because I put that into a formula, I'm going to go find my formula resource. And I'm going to add this right here and I'm going to cut it. So I have it in my clipboard. I'm going to highlight this because it's rich text and I'm going to hyperlink it. And my hyperlink URL is going to be my formula.
That is so cool.
So now if I save this and we do this one more time.
See, I wrote a class. I had to write a test class in a sandbox. I had to deploy it.
No way.
I didn't know about this. You have made a lot of people happy with this. Lakshmi wants your formula in chat because she's following along.
Yeah, I posted that. So the my location needs to be changed out. It's a placeholder in this formula. So that's where you're going to put your ID and take out the double quotes too. You don't need the double quotes there. So, all right. So we're going to do this. I've got my email address in here. I'm going to hit next. All right. You ready?
Fingers crossed. This is magic.
Oh, look, one click and I open the account I just created.
This is not real. This is magic. It's so cool. No, seriously, this is so useful.
Yep. So I absolutely love doing that because you can hack any URL. And the great thing is because I'm using that API to find the front part of the URL, when I move this from a sandbox to production, it won't break.
Right.
Otherwise, if you hard coded it, because you can, I can take all of this stuff and I could hard code that in. And as soon as I move that to production, that front part of the URL changes from sandbox to prod or from one dev org to another. So using that API formula means that this will travel from any org to any other org and still work.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this is really cool.
It's my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
Awesome. All right. So we have two more options for what we can do for our next use case.
Okay.
So scenario number 2, we can do either a record triggered flow. So we can send an email alert as well as custom bell notification through Salesforce. Or what we can do is we can mass update when a record's address changes, we can mass update all of the contact addresses at the same time.
So somebody said record triggered flows, please.
Okay, so this is also a record triggered flow. So we'll do this scenario because I think this is really awesome. Usually I use this to teach loops, but I'm going to teach you the way that actually just skips loops entirely. Because as long as you're making the same update to every record, you don't need a loop anymore.
Oh, I mean,
Right? Right? Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll close that. Make sure that's saved. We'll go back to Flow Builder.
This would be so good for data cleanup. Just create a quick flow.
Yes. Okay, so we're going to create a new flow. This time it is going to be a record triggered flow. So we'll choose that option here. And so we are going to trigger this on the account object. Anytime the account address changes, so I want this only when a record is updated, then we're going to go ahead and fire this flow. So my condition requirements, I need certain conditions to be met. I don't want this on every record change to account, just specific ones. So, and again, not a perfect scenario. I'm going to use just a couple of fields. You would probably trigger this when any account address field was changed. But I'm going to say, okay, so if the billing street, billing city, or billing state change. And so I'm going to use the is changed operator. And then because I asked a question with that operator, said, is it changed? I have either yes or no, true or false. So we're going to use global constant true for all of these. So did my billing street change? Yes. Did my billing city change? Yes. Did my billing state change? Yes. and I want any of these to trigger my flow. As long as one field changes, run my flow. Okay, now we're going to use the actions and related records because we have a change to the account that needs to update the contacts. Those are two separate records. So we need to do this for related records. So that's why we're going to choose the one on the left instead of the one on the right. Okay, so this is actually really cool. This is a one element flow because what we're going to do is we are going to go straight to an update. And it's going to say, okay, update contact addresses. So we are going to actually specify the conditions to identify the records and then set all the fields individually. So we're going to say, I know exactly what records I want to change. I want to change them all the exact same way. So I'm going to go find all my contacts. Now that's a little too broad. I don't want every contact in the org to have this because Michelle and Bhavna's accounts have different addresses. And I don't want my mail going to her. Give me my mail. So what we're going to do is we're going to say where the account ID of the contact matches the ID of the record. So $record says account. This is the object that we're working with. I want that ID field. So if I scroll down here and I find ID, account ID, I need all contacts where the account ID on the contact matches the ID of the account record that just got changed. Make sense? Okay, so now we're going to change all the fields on our contacts. So I need my street. And I'm going to change all of my mailing fields. So my street, my city, and my state. And we'll change the zip, even though I didn't add that to the conditions. I just did that because of time. So, okay, what do I want to change this to? Okay, somebody said filter part again. So I said, I'm going to tell you which records to go update. And I said, first of all, go get contacts. And when I said contacts, it will get literally every contact in my entire org. I didn't put any filters on it. I said, get all of the contacts. That's a little too broad. We need to narrow it down. So we changed the address on a specific account. So that's our $record is our account. So that is the restriction or the filter that we want to use to find contacts. We want to only find contacts that are related to that account. And contacts as an object is related to account through the account ID. So the contact field account ID needs to match the account ID field of the record that got changed. So that's the filter part again. Take the account that we just changed and only go find all of the contacts related to that. So I'm going to change my account's address. I'm going to leave Bhavna's account address alone. So my contact address should change. Bhavna's should not. That's what we're doing with our filter. So then we're going to set the field values, and we know we want to set them to whatever just got updated on our account. So we're going to go into our $record, that placeholder variable for account again. And we're going to say, okay, I need my billing street. So set the mailing street on contact equal to the account billing street, whatever it just got changed to. We're going to do the same thing with the city.
So record is always the record that triggered this flow, right?
Yep. And it'll tell you that it's the account, so we know what object we're working with. So I can do this once for my account. I can run this again for Bhavna's account. I can run this again for the Salesforce account that's in this org. And so it has that context to know what account I'm talking about this time when I ran the flow.
Right.
Okay, so I'm just going to set these 4 fields to whatever's on the account. So I'm going to go ahead and click done. We're going to save this. We're going to call this. So again, naming conventions, this is on the account object. So I'm going to start with account. This is a record triggered flow. This is an after save flow because it's optimized for actions and related records. So I'm going to call it after save. And then this only happens on update. So UO stands for update only. CO is create only. CU is create and update. And then what are we doing? We're updating contact addresses. Again, fill me out, make Michelle happy. We're going to save this. Okay, so record triggered flows we can debug. It's going to be really cool when we do this in real time though. So I'm actually going to go pull up a different account that we want to use. So let's go look at all accounts. And I know this one has multiple contacts. So if I go look at related, I have Jake and I have Siddhartha. So I'm going to open up both of these guys. So we can see what their addresses are. And I have some terrible record keeping in my org generally. So we'll see. All right. So 701 Mission Street, San Francisco, 94086. 701 Mission Street, San Francisco, 94086. 2 contacts, same account, address. We're going to update this. So I'm going to live dangerously. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to activate this flow without even testing it. That's how confident I am that we're going to do it. All right. So now I'm going to go over to my Salesforce account and I'm going to go to their billing address. And I am going to change this to some crazy address. So let's do 1 Salesforce Tower. Still in San Francisco, but they moved far enough away that we have a different zip code now. So I'm going to change this billing street. So 1 Salesforce Tower, 94087. Hit save. Now, if I go back over here to Jake to refresh that record. Oh, look, Jake's address is updated.
How did that happen?
Now let's make sure that Siddhartha had the same thing happen over here. Well, goodness, look at that. Both of them worked. Okay, so, all right, Bryn, why can't you use the first option? Do you document your, let's see, first option, let's start with that question. So if we go in here to do an update record, use the account record that triggered the flow. This is very specifically saying that I want to update that account. And it only gives me access to that account record. I don't have access to the children. Okay, update records related to the account that triggered the flow. You could actually use that. You could. If you want anything more complex than that, you could specify the conditions to identify. So if I only wanted to update, let's say, active contacts and not inactive contacts, I could add additional filters, and then I would need to use this down here, number 4, because this is going to do all of those. So if I go to record account, actually, hang on. This is going up the chain. That's right. This is going up, not down. So I can't actually update down the chain. There's no way for me to get to that. That's right. So I would have to be able to update a parent record, or I can update the owner. Wait, no, I can. Contacts is there. So yeah. That would also be an option. I think that's probably something that Salesforce added since I built this presentation. So old habits die hard.
So I guess the second one will give you all the contacts, and the fourth one will let you specify some filter on all the contacts.
Actually, this is letting you do filters too. So yeah, 100%. You can absolutely use this. This is really nifty. I'm going to have to add this to my toolbox. So yeah, Bryn, awesome call out on that. If you're updating related records, you can do that. If you want to update unrelated records, then number 4 is definitely going to be the option, because you can go find any records of any object to update.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So, yep, absolutely. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you document your flows, or naming convention and description is enough? Oh yes, document. So I'm going to pull up. Let me see if I can actually find it first without flashing customer data all over a screen I shouldn't be sharing. Probably don't need to get fired tonight.
No, don't do that.
Yep, wrong account. Okay, let's log into the right account, and then that will help. So yeah, I do a couple of different things to document flows. To my knowledge, there's not really a template available for flow documentation. For me, it's Lucidchart. And this is a free version, so I get stymied pretty quickly on the free version for personal use. But if you've got access to a tool like this, honestly, even PowerPoint or Google Slides can be used to document a flow. Johann Furman is a CTA out of Germany with a really great rule of thumb. If your flow is too complicated to put on a PowerPoint slide, you need to break it apart. So that's pretty cool. But I do two things. I do a process map, and then I actually do an outline of my flow, and they're slightly different. So if you look at them, my process map just has steps in order of what needs to happen. My flow outline actually is the steps I need to take with the elements written out. So if we zoom in on this a little bit better so you can see it. So here is my case process map. My use case is that when a case is created, I want two things to happen. Number one, immediately, I want to notify every opportunity owner that their account now has a case. Because if they call somebody 10 minutes later and go, hey, so gonna sign that sales order, and they're like, hey, so your stuff's broken and I don't want to talk to you right now. We can stop them from being a little upset with us. So the other thing is, to ensure good customer service, I have an SLA of 10 minutes. Somebody needs to have touched that case within 10 minutes. So if that time frame goes by, my customer service manager is getting an email that we have a case that hasn't been touched and we need to escalate that. So again, teaching flow, maybe not the best real world scenario. Otherwise, maybe my CSM is getting bombarded by emails or doesn't check her email or whatever. So again, teaching flow concepts here. But I have two things that I need to happen, some immediately, some after 10 minutes. So I need to find all the open opportunities, make sure I got any. Then I need to add the owner of every opportunity to a collection and send them an email. After 10 minutes, I need to check and make sure the case is still in new status. If it is, I need to figure out who I need to email, because I have it set up to be stored in a custom metadata object, so I don't hard code in people's email addresses. And then I need to send that email to the customer success manager. That's great. It's pretty close to what I actually need, but it's not exact. So if we look at the actual flow, the case gets created. I get my open opportunities. I check and make sure that I have opportunities that are found. And then I have to actually do a loop to go through the opportunities one by one and add the owner email, because that's not something that's stored on the actual opportunity. So, and you can't have more than one opportunity owner. If you have 15 opportunities, there might be 3 or 4 or 5 people that own them between those 15. So I have to loop through each, check and see who the owner is, find that owner's email, add it to a collection, and make sure I only add it once, so they only get one email. And so then once I have that, I'm going to send an email to the opportunity owner. So same thing after 10 minutes. This is actually an exact copy. Check the case is still new. Figure out who I'm sending an email to. Send that email. So this is generally how I document all the flows that I build. And I do this before I build them. So that way I can find any choke points or things that I may have missed. And it's really helped me be able to build better and faster than just sitting in front of a blank canvas and being, well, this is what I want to do. Let's see what happens. So that is absolutely how I document my flows. I use description fields everywhere I possibly can, especially since those now show up on your canvas. So if we hop back in here, and I don't know if this may not be on the latest release, so they're not showing up here, but usually if we go into flows, let's see. Nope, that's not a good one either. So yep, if I hover over this, you can see I actually have that description filled out with test. So that's where we've got that showing up on the canvas, so I don't have to click into it to figure out what it does. So Lakshmi, what the loop email is doing is I built a collection variable to hold all of the email addresses of my owners. So it's looking at every opportunity. So let's say I have over here collection of emails. I'm going to put them here. So I look through the first opportunity and Bhavna owns that one. So I go, okay, great. I've got an opportunity for Bhavna. I'm going to grab Bhavna's email address. I'm going to put Bhavna's email here. So I go to the next opportunity and I look at it and I own that one. So I go, okay, new email address. Let's grab that. Put my email address in here along with Bhavna's. Go to the third opportunity, look at it. Who owns it? Oh, Bhavna does. Oh, okay. Well, I already have Bhavna's email address, so I don't need to add it again. I'm just going to go on to the next one. But what it's doing is it's looping through and adding to my collection the email addresses that I need to send to, and then I'll use that to send my email later. So, all right, I think I promised to keep it to an hour and a half, so that's where we're at. And I'll wrap it up, but I'll definitely open things up for questions for sure. So I will make the presentation available, so it'll have the other scenarios that we didn't get through, as well as this list of resources for more places to learn more about Flow. And I saw a question asked if there's a second date with Flow, and so Bhavna, I think
we're gonna need one.
I think you and I can talk about that, and maybe we can have a second date with Flow.
Yes, I think we'll need one. I think the first date went really well.
And I'm going to copy this at someone's request.
Yes,
Many.
Yes, we
Here's a full list of all of those.
Yeah, and then we'll share all this too later. But yeah, thank you.
Yep. So, but yeah, I'll open it up. Any questions?
Yeah, does anybody have any questions now? Or you can also find her on Twitter and other places to ask her questions too.
Yep. So final shameless plug, automationhour.com. I co-host this webinar series. And we are doing a year-long Flow bootcamp. And so we have been starting with kind of how to identify strategies for automation, how to identify opportunities for what you can automate. We're going to start with the elements of Flow Builder next week. And so this is a great time to hop in there, sign up for our upcoming webinar series, but the entire year goes into what I did in much, much more detail. So they're an hour session every other week. But yeah, I would 100% encourage you to dig into all that.
Thank you. Michelle, I have a question. If you have time, that's a broad question, I know, but when there is an error, how you handle those errors? Do you have any tips? For example, there is an error and you receive an email that there's an error in Flow. How do you handle those errors?
So if you get the Flow error emails, it actually gives you the debug log in the email. And so I will read through, I'll actually usually scroll down all the way to the bottom, and it will tell me the last thing that happened and the error that resulted. So then if it's not immediately apparent, like sometimes I'll get to the bottom and it's like record can't be created because validation rule was not met. And then I see the validation rule and I'm like, okay, there's a validation rule somewhere in here, and trying to create that record violated the rule. So therefore it didn't create the record. Easy enough. Go figure out what we're missing. Either somebody didn't put in data, or we need a validation rule change or something.
Right.
You know, it could be some other error. Like required field missing. Those are pretty easy. Then you can call somebody up and say, hey, I got a Flow error email. I see you were trying to do something. Sounds like this is the problem. Let's fix that. And you can try it again. Other times it can be a little bit stranger. Sometimes the errors are not the most helpful. I love Salesforce, but sometimes it's just, it's not like beating you in the face with this is your problem. So if I get stuck like that, usually a quick Google search, and I cannot believe I forgot about this. But my go-to resource for pretty much everything is Ohana Slack. Ohana Slack 100% changed my career. There are 10,000 plus people on there from across the world who are all Salesforce professionals. And there are dedicated channels to pretty much everything. And there is a processes channel. Automation and processes. So I threw a link in chat. I encourage you, if you are not already part of that group, to join it. When you have questions, there's a great group of people, myself included, who are there and more than happy to answer, troubleshoot, guide, suggest, advise. And occasionally we joke around and also complain about stuff. So for sure, those are some of the ways that I handle errors when I get those. I also try and build error handling into my flows so that my users don't get hit with those. They can still finish out and have a good user experience, even if on the back end, I'm receiving an error email and I can say, hey, I know you tried to do this. I got an email that something didn't work quite right. So let's go and troubleshoot what happened, and we'll get it fixed up so you can go about your day.
Yeah, I think it also gives you the stack trace if something breaks in code, then you can go talk to the developer. Say, it broke in your trigger.
Yep. I put almost no code in my org when I was an admin because I can't write code.
Yeah, yeah.
So I had one trigger on one object that literally its whole job was to call a flow because I just could not trigger a flow off that object.
Yeah.
So I had somebody else help me write that trigger just big enough to call a flow, and I did everything else in my flow.
Yeah. Nice. No, this was really amazing. And I'm going to look into that boot camp because I'm, like I said, I end up with a lot of orgs where I have to deal with flows. So, and also when something happens, it could be in code, it could be in flow, it could be anywhere. So that's another thing. So you have to, be able to look at the flow and see what they're doing.
Absolutely.
I learned a lot today. So thank you so much
Yay.
for your time. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thrilled to be here. I'm so glad you asked me to come and present, and
Yes. Yes.
absolutely happy to come back for a second date.
Yeah. Yeah. This is like been a really good turnout today for our meeting too. And then everybody's like still here, which is amazing, So because like it was like very gripping, everybody like, yeah, we all need this. And then you have a very easy way of teaching. So your analogies and everything was like perfect. So thank you so much. Okay, well, if nobody else has any questions, we'll let Michelle go have dinner. And then you are 1 hour behind, right?
Yes.
It's 7 p.m. for us or whoever's on.
One last question. Do you record the automation hour webinars? And where can I access this?
So you have the upcoming webinars page. If you go to previous webinars, they're all here. It's all on our YouTube channel.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll do it. I'll join that too. There's something about going to live things because then you can ask questions. That's
Yep,
nice.
absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Have a great night, Lakshmi. I honestly don't know if there's a contact us form on the website, but you can certainly reach out to me on social and I can answer whatever questions you have about boot camp.
Yeah. Yeah. You are on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Yep.
Active, very active. Yeah. Somewhat on Facebook.
Yeah, also Facebook, there's a Salesforce for Everyone group on there that I'm part of. So.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. Cool. Well, thanks everyone.
All right. Have a wonderful night. Go eat dinner. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you.